Hi, Wanderers.
Welcome to Wanderlost.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Amanda.
And this is Military Chatter.
This is the series where we talk about what our life is like in the military.
And this time we're going to talk about housing.
Yay! This is our last video in this series, except for the Q&A. So this is the last time, maybe, that I'll be wearing a hat.
You hope.
Maybe I can get my hair cut before the Q&A. Maybe the world is almost back to normal, but probably not. So we'll see what happens. Maybe no hat, but you guys keep asking questions. We've got a list going, and we'll keep it going, and we'll be back next week with our Q&A.
So, housing options as an Air Force family. So what are our options?
Well, there's three.
Well,
there's two options.
Two options.
You can live on base, or you can live off base.
There's your options. Now, if you live off base, you've got some other options there.
You can buy, or you can rent.
Yes. So, let's talk about base housing.
Yeah, so base housing is the easiest, I think anyway, that it's the easiest based on our experience.
As far as living there, depending on your location, getting base housing, it can be tricky. That was one of the challenges here.
Right, I just kind of meant as long as it's available, it's a no-brainer because it's easy. Now here comes the first acronym, it's BAH.
Basic Allowance for Housing.
Okay, so we get an allowance for housing, and
BAH is based on your location. So the DoD does a formula where it says here's what a person at this rank, with or without dependents, should get to be able to get adequate housing in your location.
Basic.
Yeah, basic allowance for housing.
And so yes, if you are in Travis Air Force Base, which is in California, your BAH is a whole lot more expensive than if you are at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is in Ohio. So
yeah. So that there's that base basic thing right there. Now, what's a little different that's changed in the last 10 years or so is nearly all stateside military housing has become privatized.
Right.
So what that means is that there's a housing company or a real estate company that has taken over management of those buildings, and what they get is they get our BAH every month. So so the BAH you never see.
Right. It just goes straight to them. It doesn't even. Yeah.
And that's the flat rate. So I may get a certain amount as an O4, and an E4 gets a certain amount, and for whatever reason, we could be in almost identical housing, and I don't get a cut rate. It just goes. Now, the bonuses to that are, one, you're not having to deal with buying or selling a house or renting.
And it works just like a rental property. If something breaks, you call the housing people, they come over, they fix it. If something needs to be replaced, they come over, they fix it, that kind of thing, just like a rental. So,
and they're usually fairly responsive.
They have for us every time.
We haven't had a really bad experience yet.
No, I mean there are horror stories out there, but
I think there is in everything. One thing you have to do is if you live in base housing, this is probably not too different from doing a rental. Is you're free to paint every room if you want, but when you leave, you're going to paint it back to the basic off-white that it came. If you want to hang something, anything more than a shelf, you can't go, this would be really nice if we knocked out this wall and gave it an open concept. You're not doing that. Right. So a lot of your freedom of what you might want to do that you could do as a homeowner, you're not going to have. I have a retired supervisor of mine. He's been retired, and they're slowly painting their whole house. And he said, for the first time in 30 some odd years, I don't have beige walls because that's what they look like. And I'll be honest, for me, I don't have a lot of desire to paint it to in 3 years paint it back. We will accent it in other ways.
With things like this.
Right.
Although this wall is blue, but we didn't paint this.
Right. And we bought this time.
We own this house, so we could paint it, but we didn't. It was already painted, and we just left it because we don't like to paint.
Yes. So that's on-base housing, and there are some challenges to that. One is each installation does a little different with how to sign up. Some locations you can't get on the list until you're physically at the
And
location.
on the list, he means waiting list to get a house.
To get a house. So, so it doesn't, you get there and there's a long list, and you can't sign up to be waiting until you get there. Some locations you can sign up as soon as you get orders. Some you can put your thing in and 60 days out from your arrival date. So it depends on the location.
Yeah, they all have something different.
And sometimes it's just timing. If you PCS in an off time, it might be difficult. But if you're PCS when everybody else is, there's a lot of turnover in the houses.
Right.
Maybe you can get straight into one.
Emptying, so it
Yeah.
makes it easier. And then there used to be a policy where, because covered in your BAH is also your utilities. So, but then there was a policy at one time where they would monitor your utilities for a 6-month period, and then they would either send you a check because you didn't use as many utilities as they thought they would, as they thought you would, or they would send you a bill because you used more. However,
With the new National Defense Authorization Act, that's gone away.
that's gone away.
So that changes
It's gonna
with what Congress does sometimes. So, but that is a huge advantage to living on base, is that you don't have utility bills.
Right, so you're not paying rent, you are your BAH, but it covers your rent, it covers your utility, that means like water and electricity and garbage.
There's almost no out of pocket from a housing perspective, which is different if let's go to option 2, which is living off base.
Right.
So if you live off base, the BAH is really designed for renting. So it's a lot of people, and we'll talk about how they are able to some people even build wealth through this, but there's a trade-off there. But the BAH is designed for you to rent something that will be the word I'm looking for here, adequate for your family to live in the time that you're here. So if you decide to rent, it's pretty straightforward. You find a place that you want to rent from, hopefully a good landlord, and you do it, and you put your deposit down first and last, all that sort of stuff. So
but you'll
pretty
get
standard.
your BAH will then show up in your check, like,
Yes, and then you'll turn
and
and
then
pay.
you'll have to pay your rent just like you normally would.
So renting is it's pretty easy.
Right, it's just
Now,
sorry.
with both buying and renting, what is different is if you're renting, and let's use round figures. Let's say your BAH in an area is $2,000.
Okay.
So they're saying for your family, your rank, to get what should be adequate, we expect it to cost $2,000. But you know a guy, or you're willing to
That sounded
maybe
fishy.
rent in an area that's not as desirable as others, and you can find a place to rent it for $1,000.
Then you just made $1,000.
You just keep $1,000 a month. Now you may have to pay that in other ways of having to buy, a security system, or that sort of stuff. Maybe your
or a
insurance,
new car if your car gets stolen
right,
every week.
or your insurance is higher. But if you can find a place that's cheaper, that's your allowance, and you've chosen to maybe live in rent a smaller house because it's going to save you $500 a month. So you can also theoretically do that if you're purchasing. Depending on what you're buying. So if you're purchasing, it's the same thing. You find a house that you want, you buy it just like you would. Now, the challenge with purchasing is, one, the BAH is designed for a rental thing. So the danger with buying is that when you leave,
You might not be able to sell your house.
yes. And for some people, that's great. What they want to do is have rental properties.
Right, true.
And they do that. That becomes a challenge sometimes, though, and we've had a lot of people come and say, hey, y'all, pray that we can get some renters, because, if you've got a house in, let's say, Georgia, and you're across the country, and...
Or in Spain.
Right. And somebody, renters leave and you're having trouble finding renters, you now owe two mortgages.
Well, or if you do want to sell your house, and the military says, here's the day we need you to be at your new location, and you haven't sold the house that you bought, but now you've got to live on base or buy another house or rent another house. Now again, you have two house payments or a rent and a house payment, and you only have one BAH. They will not give you your BAH from this location. You're now earning the BAH from this new location, and they expect you to use it to pay for a house at this location.
Yeah.
So it can become stressful in that
transition
in
period.
between time. And what we're learning, because this is the first time we've purchased a house, but what we're learning is if you live in an area that is military, so that the realtors know that people come and go all the time, they sometimes want to sell your house for what they know will sell quickly. So they're not playing some kind of long game where they shoot $25,000 over what they think they can get for it and then just hope for the best, and wait 6 months
Right.
because they know you need to go. So
most
just
realtors will shoot basically for you to break even.
right. Well, and for what they know it'll sell for. Like, they're not trying to raise up their market. They're trying to get people moved because they understand that you have to go.
So I think it is important, and we've learned that this assignment is if you're going to go somewhere and you want to buy, ask around about realtors and find one that understands the military life.
Yes.
And if you're in an area where there is a base, they're going to have those realtors, but that's who you want.
Right.
Because they're going to get it, especially if you can find maybe one that's a retired military member who has gotten out and stayed there and become a realtor.
That's what we did.
Those are awesome. Shout out to our guy. That's how you want to do that. But what it boils down to is what do you want to do? Do you want to live on base?
And I guess it boils down to what kind of house do you want? Because we have always had enough room on base at every location that we have lived in. And you're authorized 1 bedroom for the couple and then 1 bedroom for each child. Now, almost the largest houses have about 4 bedrooms. So if you have more than 3 kids, don't go promising everybody that they're getting their own bedroom, because that's generally not how it works. However, there are some 6-bedroom, 5-bedroom houses that are available. But what we've done is what we've had has been sufficient for us. That changed when we moved here because we knew we wanted more room for foster kids that we knew we were going to be bringing into the house. So we could have settled for a 3-bedroom house and gotten all of our kids in rooms, not their own rooms, but in rooms. A 4-bedroom would have been perfect for everybody to spread out. So we wanted 5 bedrooms so that we could have extra room for anybody that we wanted, any foster kids that we wanted to come to the house. So that's why we chose this time to not live on base, because on base you can't say, oh, we're gonna have foster kids, we would like more room. No.
They don't care. If they're not on your orders, they don't care.
Right, if they're not on your orders, you are not authorized an extra bedroom for them. So we made it work in Colorado and in Maryland, having foster kids in both of those locations while we lived on base. You can totally be foster parents on base. However, they're not giving you extra room for those kids. Even once the kids are living in your house, they're still not yours. They're not on your orders. They're not in DEERS.
Yeah.
Tell them what DEERS means.
Dependent eligibility enrollment reporting system.
Okay. So they're not in DEERS, they're not on your orders, you're not getting rooms for them. So sometimes though, you do luck out, like Ron's cousin ended up just a couple, no children, with a 3-bedroom house because it was the only thing that was available when their name came up on the list and they gave it to them. So their very first assignment, they lived on base. That does not always happen. Sometimes you have 4 kids and they say, we have a 2-bedroom, and you're like, well, we can't move in there, so sorry. And then you just have to keep waiting on the waiting list. So the waiting list becomes your nemesis or a hero.
What it boils down to is what you want out of where you want to live. If you're a person who likes to paint and to personalize your house, and maybe you want to, you're that crafty person, handyman who wants to finish out a room or knock out a wall, then you probably don't want to live on base because you can't do any of that stuff. If you're like me, who that just doesn't appeal to me, that's not in my wheelhouse, then living on base is great.
Although there is a Facebook group. It might be private, so I might not be able to share it, but I'll look and see if it's private, I'll share it. It is people in the military showing you ways, very creative ways, that they have completely redone on base houses, and they're beautiful. Like, people will take this, generally is the cheapest tile or whatever that the military will buy to go on the floor of the house, especially in overseas assignments. Sometimes it's just like concrete floors, but they have taken like this laminate stuff and they know how to put it down in a way that they can peel it right back up when it's time for them to go, and it will do no damage to the house. And so it is filled up with ideas for how to do that if you still want to do that, but you can't live off base. You need
So let's, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, but there's a little difference if you live overseas. So overseas, most, depending on where you go, like we've been in 2 locations where we had to live on base. One, everybody did. One, because of my role, I had to live on base, while 80% of the people lived off base. Overseas, if you live off base, you get what's called an OHA. It's an overseas housing allowance. And there's an upper ceiling of how much you get, but once you negotiate your rent with the local national that you're renting from, then that money drops to that. So let's say that's $1,000 a month, but your rent ends up being $600. You don't get to keep that $400 like you do stateside, right? Because okay, you set this with the landlord, and that's what it's going to be. Right. Or you're going to live on base, and on base nearly everything is the same. You're not going to take as many appliances because you're overseas, right? and things don't quite work. But we did that same thing in Spain. We paid for some very cheap carpet to be laid down in our upstairs because it was tile everywhere, and we're talking high school cafeteria tile. And we kept that downstairs and got some rugs, but upstairs we carpeted everything, but literally there was no pad.
And you mean Turkey, right?
Turkey, yeah.
You said Spain.
Oh, sorry. Turkey.
I thought we didn't have upstairs in
right.
Spain.
Turkey.
I also didn't remember getting carpet.
So literally it was just the thinnest carpet, cut to the exact dimensions of the room, taped down in the corners, no pad, no nothing. But at least I wasn't getting up on tile every morning, and it was somewhat, right. warmer and that sort of stuff. So you can do some of those sorts of things, but it's going to be harder to go wild. So if you're I gotta change this room and paint every wall and that sort of stuff.
And knock out a wall like my mother.
You should probably buy it.
You should. Okay, so I think we have touched on everything that has to do with moving in the military, but some of you are still asking questions.
But if we've not touched on what you were wondering about, please put a question down in the comments. We love doing the Q&As. It gives us an opportunity to respond to what you're wondering about. But we hope that this has, again, been informative to you. It's based on our experience, so we're by no means experts, but we do feel like we have at least a little bit of a unique knowledge that we can pass on to you guys.
And don't forget about asking questions for the kids Q&A. We're saving them up still, and we'll film that once we get a lot of questions for the boys.
Absolutely. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Bye, guys.
See you later.